Welcome everyone to Unsheathed Sword Reviews. I'm Vic.
I'm John.
And I'm Kane.
And once again, Kane Shin is joining us, and this time for an official review. Once again, sir, thank you for coming down here and slumming it with us here on Unsheathed Sword Reviews.
Thank you, guys. Very gracious hosts. You guys should try this. I'm not doxing you, but just putting it out there. And cheers.
Cheers, sir.
Cheers.
All right, so you were gracious enough to bring a rather badass sword for us to review. Why don't you give a brief description of what this is?
This is a Cloudhammer Steelworks competition cutting sword, graciously sent by sword friend John. Not this one. Another John, right? Another know-nothing John. And he's a person who runs RVA Katana Shop, although Richmond, Virginia. Also runs a very successful channel on YouTube, but also TikTok. Check it out in the description down below.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me a few katanas before for me to examine, but what I'm really interested in is the new Cloudhammer competition cutting offering. So this exact model was sent to Queen's Gambit last year as a longsword to participants who didn't bring their swords.
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler alert, that's what the person who won the gold medal used. So
I don't know what kind of testament you want about your sword.
Sword
but...
proof,
That's
right?
a pretty good testimony, definitely.
And it has already been reviewed by Philip Martin, and very experienced cutter. But I looked it up, and the review shows that the previous rendition has some, major differences than this one. So I ran it over with John of RVA Katana. He said maybe they did a revision of the model, but this brings more bevel depths in the upper portion, make it wider, and also previously they had a convex distal taper, so remains pretty thick down here and then sits down. Now it has a concave distal taper, even though the overall degrees remains the same.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So you're saying that this is a revision, and John and I, unfortunately, don't have any experience with that. So this is kind of our first time seeing this model of sword.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, we usually start with fit and finish and aesthetics. So John, what do you think of the look and the aesthetics of this sword?
I can't say enough about how much I like the way this sword looks. It to me looks like what I would envision a longsword made with modern materials that isn't trying to pull off a period aesthetic should look like. I think it's got some nice design features. I think it's a very modern looking sword, and I love it. I can't say enough good things about it. I like the cord wrap. I know Kane had mentioned some hesitations about that, and I see what he's talking about. There is some movement on the cord, so that could be an issue down the road if you do a lot of cutting with it. I think that might be something to address long term. But in terms of how it looks, I think it looks dynamite. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about how I think the sword looks.
Yeah, and it should be mentioned real quick that the price point you said was $500 US.
$500 US.
So that's the thing to keep in mind. So if they're designing something specifically to be a competition cutter or something you're going to use frequently, they weren't necessarily putting that kind of money into aesthetics. So we talk about on our channel sometimes, if you're making a budget or a mid-range sword, sometimes you got to cut corners. 100% it seems put the money into the handling and performance, which we'll get to. For me personally, the aesthetic is very simplistic. I do think it looks fine. I knew right away John was gonna love this. It screams up his alley like a John sword. I think it's fine. I'm not a huge fan of the cord. I prefer swords that look a little bit more elegant than that, but I get at $500, and for what they're going for, I think this is completely acceptable. I think it looks cool. Okay?
I think it's the overall feel, the look and feel, just screams utilitarian. And it's like a no-nonsense warrior's weapon.
Yeah.
It doesn't concern with aesthetics even a bit, right? Like everything is minimalist. Like look at the wheel pommel; it's big and imposing. It does the job of the counterweight and the crossguard. Everything is perfectly just ergonomic.
Yeah.
And utilitarian. Yet there's nothing fancy about any part. Right? It just does the job. And then what I mentioned about the less pronounced profile taper earlier, it brings like a feel of just formidable cutting sword because given how wide it is at a foible, even though the base isn't necessarily very wide.
Right.
So even like it feels shorter than it actually is.
What's the blade length on this?
Blade size is 35.4.
Okay,
So
that's what I
it's
was
not
It's a
a
pretty long blade.
Yeah.
it's not very short,
Right.
even though it's not a very long sword, but
Right.
it's not short. But when you
Yeah.
pick it up, it almost feels short
Right.
because of the proportion of the hilt
It is
to
a
the
long
blade,
hilt, yeah.
very long hilt, and blade is wide.
Right. It definitely has some weight to it when you pick it up. Probably a good transition to handling. So, like, what did you think about how this felt? How it cut and all that?
It has a good amount of distal taper, and which we'll mention earlier. We'll mention later.
Yeah, the
And-
specs will be in the description.
Right, and so there's enough agility for you to maneuver this around without too much effort. Yet there's so much, oomph in the
Yeah.
cut. However, it's still not very hard to stop a cut, right? At any arbitrary point.
Mhm.
So there's like a very balanced approach. Because when you go to competition cutting, the first few rounds will be single cuts, like see how clean your cuts are. But once you go through those rounds, the finalist challenges will be agility based, technique oriented. So you really want to retain some maneuverability. And the point of balance on this one is at 3.5 inches from the guard. So it's a very good blend between maneuverability and authority. It basically it does the work for you once you get it going.
Right.
What do you feel?
Yeah, I agree. It sort of felt like a train. Like it takes some oomph to get it moving, but like once you have it aimed, there's almost nothing that's going to stop it. It's like on its own track. It's perfect. Like I really enjoyed cutting with this sword. I think, like I said, as I was saying outside, I think one of these will probably be the next sword I buy. I genuinely love the way it looks, and I really like the way that it handles. And also, I can attest to the fact that Kane, who put the edge on this sword, did an excellent job. Because as I was drying it off with the paper towel, I had an oopsie.
Yeah.
And
I
so-
apologize.
No, don't apologize. It means you did a good job.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
It's now imbued with
exactly.
John's
Right,
blood.
so-
I officially named this one John's blood.
So yeah, no, I was in love with the way it handled. I pulled off some really good, really clean cuts with it right off the bat. It's just like sometimes you pick up a sword and you feel like, okay, I understand how this works. That's how I felt with this sword. I did one really good, clean snap cut and just like perfect angle cut on the bottle, didn't even drop. So yeah, it's a great sword. I really enjoy it.
Nice. Yeah, for me, also impressed, but kind of an opposite initial experience with it, because like the second I picked it up, I was just like, wow, this is big. This has some weight. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to like it all that much. And then, like you said, you make the first cut and you're like, holy shit, okay, let me try that again. And yeah, the train analogy was really good. It takes a little bit to get it moving, but once it's moving, it really just kind of flows, and it moves really, really well. And it feels good. Like, I definitely can see why this would be, something you would want in a competition, or something that you would just want to train with, just to practice with. Like, I can definitely see how this tool would help teach you to become better. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I really, really like the handling. I get it. Like, I understand why people like this sword.
Right. And we spoke about the edge earlier. And the reason I need to sharpen the edges is that it didn't come sharp. Right? Like, it's almost there, but the edges are very sharp. Not 1 inch of the edge is sharp.
Oh, really?
So I did some initial cutting. I'm going to display the footage now. I see it's basically an embarrassment.
Like baseball.
Like I cut a few times, and I reviewed the footage, the perfect edge alignment, but it just tore the heck out of it. And so I put my own edge on it. I'm not a very experienced, sharpener, so everybody could do this, provided you have the tools. And now it's a monster of a cutter, and so it's a testament of the true potential
Right.
it can unleash once you get it sharpened. Just beware that if you purchase Cloudhammer Steelworks,
You might have to figure out a way to get it
to.
sharpened or get it done professionally or whatever.
Yeah.
Good thing just to be aware of. And at $500, what do you think, John? You think this is worth it?
It's a huge thumbs up for me at $500. It's like the perfect form follows function modern longsword. I love everything about it. It'd be like I'd buy it for $700.
I don't think I'd go that high, but I definitely think if this is aesthetically your thing, then
Yeah.
you're gonna love it. And the handling's fantastic at $500, even with needing to get it sharpened or touched up. I think it's definitely worth it. Kane, worth it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth the price, provided that you can sharpen the edges
Right.
or do any work. Because it's work made of Sx105v steel, so that's a really good edge retention. edge hardness is at 57, so
wow,
that's
okay.
really hard. It's harder than
high, yeah.
Albion, you know,
Yeah.
and you're gonna need some time to hone the edges, but otherwise it's very durable because you know this edge will last a long time,
Cool.
right, against any target. So it's made of that Japanese tool steel, which makes it, you know,
Very
not
durable.
only has good edge retention, but also it's very resistant to lateral bending forces.
Right. Nice. So definitely not gonna have to worry if you hit the stand. Real quick before we go, it does come with a scabbard, you said,
Yeah,
or is it
wood
wood core?
Yeah.
Wood core scabbard. Looks actually pretty nice. There's no like shape or decorations. It's again very utilitarian, kind of like the sword. So yeah, very very similar aesthetic, but it does look nice.
Good
and-
retention, right?
Yeah.
Put it in
Yeah,
there, it's
I
not
have
gonna
trouble getting it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it does retain
Yeah.
nicely. You're right.
So yeah, that's about all I got. John, got anything else?
Nope.
Kane, anything else?
Check out RV Katana's Cloudhammer Steelworks official webpage.
Yep, link will be in the description below. Thank you guys so much for joining us on Unsheathed Sword Reviews. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Peace.